Hi, it's Joe Volpe, publisher of Corriere Canadese, North America's only Italian language daily newspaper. And as usual, I'm here with the cooperation of Go Live TV and Corriere Media Group. Today is a special day because we are collaborating with the Monteleone Community Center of Toronto to produce this particular video and this particular discussion on the occasion of the 76th anniversary of women revolting against World War II in this little town in Italy, Monteleone di Puglia. And I have with me today the president of the Toronto or Monteleone Community Center of Toronto, Luigi Nuno. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having us here.
No, but thank you for sponsoring this.
Thank you for inviting us, and it's indeed an honor for us and myself on behalf of my board to accept this invitation for sponsoring this event.
Perfect. And right beside you is Mr. John Adorisio, who is the social coordinator of the Monteleonese in Mississauga.
Yes, I'm very honored to be here, and I thank you very much for having me here.
Listen, you guys are welcome. So as I said, what we're doing is we're going to take a look at this very special event. I think it's a fabulous historic event that involved women. You know, today people talk about empowering women, but this is a case where women just got themselves empowered. Now, I wonder if, can we bring back the aerial shot of the town? Do you mind bringing that back for us for a second? So I wanted to talk about that. This little town here, this is where you guys come from and where I come from.
Yes.
So can we talk for a minute about the history of this town? If you wouldn't mind leaving that image up there for a moment. So this town is in southern Italy,
Yeah.
Regione di Puglia,
Yes.
on the border of Regione di Campania.
Sì.
Okay, those
Sì.
two provinces,
Sì.
right? Now, we should conduct this all in
Siamo
the town.
esattamente a 850 metri, we are 850 meters above the sea.
So
Yeah.
it's about 2,700 feet above sea level.
Correct.
So it's not down in the plains.
No,
The air is
it's the tallest town in the province.
in all of that Puglia district.
Yes, the second one is Faeto.
That's a little small town.
Yes,
It's a little bit lower.
about 20 meters.
Lower.
Yeah.
Lower than us.
Yeah, but you can tell the difference.
But we're the highest. We're the highest.
Okay, and especially with the peak of that church that we're going to see
Yeah,
again.
okay.
I wonder if you slow that down a little bit for now. Just slow it down a bit because we'll come back to it. I want to talk about that town, that little town. Please bring up the aerial shot of the town itself. Now, to bring it back up again, because this town is, how old is it, Luigi?
Oh, it's probably 6, 7 centuries old.
No, it's
but,
more than that.
More than that, 1200 or 1300.
Yeah, it's about that.
Actually, there's a legend that the Romans used to breed the lions for the Colosseum.
Yeah, well,
Now, that's an older legend.
That's I like that legend because it means that somebody, you know, there's
Yeah,
some ancient
well.
blood there. But actually, that area of Italy was inhabited by, now if you can stop there and leave it there for a moment or two, by Samnite tribes, well before the Romans appeared on the scene.
Yeah.
But that town, as you see it right now, actually dates back, according to history,
Yes.
to the emigration of some Catholics in northeastern Italy, at that time around Avignon,
Yes.
near Nice,
Yeah.
and they were transferred from there to this place.
Yeah.
And they built the town as you see it right now. That's about 800 and some odd years ago. But what used to be there was an old Norman fortress founded about 950 AD. So it's 1,000 years old at
Yes,
least.
right. At least.
It's been there for a while.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what people don't know is that, you know, you told me this story as well, Luigi. Remember the former mayor of
Leonardo Lalla.
who did some research?
Yes.
And he
yes.
brought in researchers from Germany.
That's right. There were a lot of Germans, and he said that maybe your ancestors were Germans
Oh
too.
man, can you believe it? And I thought it was a 100% return. I had to go to Ancestry.ca to see.
Because of your height and the looks and everything.
You know, all the bersaglieri that are recruited out of that area
Yes, they
for
were.
their height more
That's
than anything
right,
else.
yeah.
Bersaglieri, for those of you who don't know it,
Mhm.
are a special type of stormtroopers,
Yes.
made famous because of the helmet that they have with
They were always on the run.
always on the run,
Yeah.
marching forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people used to denigrate them by saying they're battering rams.
Yeah.
No, but Louis and John, the story about this place, Leonardo Lalo used to say that the researchers found the very first, the oldest courts of assize, the Corte di Assisi.
See,
So we're not going to do this in Italian because we
Yeah.
want to do it. We want to share this history with everybody else.
with our children and grandchildren.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Then another time we might do a more amplified thing in Italian. But so you had these Normans who had a courts of assize. Now, for those who are Canadians, like your grandchildren, the Canadians would know that a courts of assize were the very first precursors of what are modern day parliaments.
That's right.
They were parlement, I parlamenti, where you yak, yak, yak instead of fight, fight, fight.
Yeah.
So when the Normans were dissuaded from or persuaded to go to northern France and then subsequently to England, they brought this system of courts of assize up there. Now, what's interesting about this town is that it became part of a chain of fortresses going from Naples right out to Manfredonia, Foggia on the
The
Adriatic.
other side, yeah.
So it's a central town. But today the story is that this town in 1942 was the location of a rebellion against the government of the day, conducted almost exclusively by women. Now,
And
if this-
children. And children.
and children. So if this had happened anywhere else in the world,
Yeah.
it would have been a subject
It was
of
the first real revolt against the fascists,
And-
Benito Mussolini.
and the Nazi allies
And the
that
Nazi
were
allies.
occupying
And
southern
they
Italy.
kept the town for
Seized.
almost
It was seized,
12
yeah.
hours until the reinforcement
Came in
from
for Foggia. Came in for Foggia.
Yes.
But in the process, what they do is, I understand it, but well, what do we talk about exactly what happened? How did that start?
Well, as far as my grandmother was one of the participants, and it all happened in the front of a bakery. Because at that time they had to do the bread by la tessera.
Yeah, they had to mill their wheat.
Anyway, this one young lady, she had a little bit too much bread, and then the inspection came and tried to,
Seize it.
seize her,
Yeah.
and that's where everything started.
But they wanted to seize it, Louis, because what happened is during the war, the government rationed.
They were trying to rationalize the reason, and what is happening with the wheat, as you were alluding to earlier, is that they were giving about, the farmers were only getting 30% of their wheat back. So when they were harvesting, 70-80% was going back to the government, because the government was giving away to Germany apparently, and the Germany in exchange were giving us coal, so that people would have some fire to keep everything going. But the amount of the wheat given back to the farmers was not enough to satisfy the family, these which were the kids and the women they left behind, because the husbands and
Were all
the
in
children
war.
had already war. But also they did not have enough to put the seeds back into following year to harvest again, and that's why the revolt starts, increasing and mounting, and then there was too much for them to take. So my understanding is that there was a representative of the fascism leader, a pharmacist, Pasquale Trombetti, and they went to him and said, "Look, we don't want to just mill some of our grain. We want as much as what we need. At least you got to double it up." So then from 1 or 2 women ended up being about 10 or 12, and at the backyard of this gentleman's house, this pharmacist, there was the caserma, where is the police headquarters. So he walked with these people, and then I guess he was afraid, so he went inside, and everyone was all the podestà, so called, and the army were all inside inside the house, and they wanted to get in, and they put fire to the place because they wanted to get in.
Fernando, can we bring up that shot of the town square and the one where the municipality is, that little garden in the municipality? Because I think you're right. And can I see that book there?
Sure.
If you can show that for a second.
Yeah, here
there,
you go.
Felipe, just if you can focus on that book for a second while he's looking for that. What happened, of course, is that the government of the region, about 20 years ago, commissioned a study. They said, why is it that these people in Italy in particular, they have a difficult time getting governed because they're so independent-minded.
Right.
How come nobody rebelled against fascists throughout Europe? And in fact, they did. They found in 1942 that this rebellion took place in this little town,
Yes.
850 meters above sea level, 100 miles from nowhere, that women rebelled. And they had to be women because the men were all at war.
That's right.
So researchers went and discovered this particular item. Now I want to come back to that in a minute because they all ended up in jail. But so they went, but the incident didn't start with them being just there. What happened is there were soldiers who and carabinieri
The
who interrupted
carabinieri.
these women.
Yes, so they went there and they were trying to get in and speak to them, and they won't. So they ended up putting fire at the door just to have access. And then I remember the place because I live not too far away from there. It had arches, so like a balcony, enclosed
Yeah.
balcony. And then this is
So
the
here
this
it is
the
right here.
City Hall. This
Yeah.
is City
Stop
Hall,
here for a second.
municipal.
This is
Yeah.
part of a reenactment
Yeah.
last year on occasion of the 75th anniversary.
Yes.
So that's the City Hall. They
Yeah.
were banging away at that center
Main
door
yes. Yeah.
and made their way in.
They couldn't get in, so they had to put the fire to the door and then they started getting in.
But you see all that paper that was out in front, those are all the documents
That they
from
were-
City Hall
that they
because
were
the
burning.
women were smart enough to realize that, you know what, if we burn all the documents, nobody can trace us back,
Yes,
right?
That's right.
So John,
Yeah.
your grandmother,
Yeah, well, my grandmother basically, she was, as the book says, she was the first one that threw the first stone at the City Hall. And
because the
after
women
that-
all started to collect in
Right.
cooperation. They put it all in their grembiuli,
Yeah.
in their aprons, and walked in the City Hall with all of these stones
Yeah.
and fires
Yeah.
and started pelting the place.
Well, just to say that they had enough of the regime.
Yeah.
And ever since that, and then things start to go from bad to worse for the fascists.
So, but those women, through these small streets, were able to hustle really quickly to get support from each other. But then, as I understand it, in the book, it says how they cut telegraph and telephone wires and then blockaded the only two entrances to the town.
Well, immediately to the left of the main door, the second door to the left, there is the post office,
Yeah.
and that's where the telegraph was. So that's where they had access to it, and they cut that off. And then they also put chains down just outside of the city where the wires were. So they threw the chains up, and as it came down, they would get together, and the hydro was cut off. So there was no communication. They could get help for 7-8 hours. And according to the book, there was a gentleman. There was a kid. He was about 12-year-old. He was trying to be taken to a town close by for help, and they stopped him and said, no, because if you go there, then they will know what happened, and then the other army from the other town will come and help the other police people.
Now-
So that one never took place.
So there's some people that John, it was
Yeah.
your grandmother, but
Yeah.
you had relatives in that too.
Yeah, I have distant relatives that I did not. I guess it must have been according to the book of my grandfather's father. He was Rocco Antonio Nunno. They might have been involved.
But there would have been some others, like you're a member of you're distantly related to the Raccioppo family
Yeah, on that
and the
side, yes,
Volpe
yeah.
family.
Yeah, there was Rosa Taggio and their sister Iria Taggio. They're all my father-in-law's first cousins. There's quite a few of those. And Michelina Gornacchia, she was only 11-year-old. She just the Carabinieri location was just 2 doors away, and she just went to look, and the guy
But
shooting.
Michelina, she got shot in the leg.
She got shot, but she
Yeah.
was only 9-year-old,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
but
she
that
was just
happened.
looking
That
at
happened
it.
just afterwards. I mean,
Yeah,
when you're talking about your grandmother,
Yeah.
she would have been a young woman at the time.
Yeah, she must have been around 29.
So,
Yeah.
as I understand, the initial start was the arrogance of one of the young soldiers, and
Well, no.
she yanked the sword that he
Well,
had beside him,
yeah,
and while she was yanking it off, both of them got cut.
yeah.
Yes.
And then all, as they say, all hell broke loose. All
Yeah.
the women went and attacked the soldiers.
And,
John, don't be shy.
And then against the policemen, they fired first, and then the women got all organized, and they said, let's do something about this.
So, but when after that happened, as
Yeah.
you said, like they cut off all communications, they blockaded the road, but somebody got through to the police, to the barracks in Foggia,
Yes.
and a squadron of soldiers came to put down a rebellion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But where did they go? I think it was just outside of this.
Yeah,
If you
and
continue with-
they lined them all up right against that wall, as you can see. There was about close to 250 women and children and some older men. And they started like an investigation. They wanted to know who did all this and so on and so on. Meanwhile, the real ladies that were responsible, they really ran away.
They were taken off.
well, they took off. You know, I mean, some of my aunts
Well,
were a part of that
Yeah,
too.
well,
you know,
they went in hiding.
But there were a few. There were a few people. Now, this is something that some of the guys that your grandkids and others don't know is that there were several women there who were Canadian.
Yeah, a matter of
You know,
fact. Well, most of them, most ladies, like my grandmother, she was married to my grandfather, which he was an American citizen. And they were mostly, many of them were also Canadian, because the husbands came here in Canada, in Toronto, before the revolt.
Right.
And they were Canadian citizens.
So some of those women were Canadian citizens.
Absolutely.
And one or two of them had actually been born here. You know, Lenny Lombardi, the CA,
That's right.
his mother,
That's
who was
right.
born here in
That's right.
1906.
And there were some of the leaders seemed to say, hey, but this is undemocratic, and I'm not used to it, and we cannot put up
We're not
with
going to
this.
put up with this nonsense,
yeah. So
right?
they
And so
were-
they rebelled.
They enticed the rest of the women to join them. And,
But you know, when they went into the main square, not the main square, Sobolubale, you know, the
Yeah.
other square down on the
Sobolade.
edge of the soldiers actually fired live ammunition
Yeah.
to quell them down, right?
it wasn't the square of the where the police station is. That's where it was. They were shooting. And when you get in on the police station on the right, there is a balcony, enclosed balcony with arches.
Yeah.
And that's where shooting right from there. They were afraid that these people were going to go through the door and attack them. And there were only 5, 6 against 50, 60 women. So they were fearing for their life, I guess. Yeah.
So then, what eventually happened, I guess, as I read in the story, the women were, and you've got images of the town virtually everywhere to just see what the town was like. It's not a well-coordinated background that we have, but you get a chance to see what the town was like. So what happened is 267 of these women were arrested, jailed in various jails throughout.
Well, mostly
Right,
Bovino, Lucera, and Foggia, some, different locations.
But they didn't all stay there for. Some of them were freed after a couple of months,
No, exactly. They were 14 to 16 months.
14 to 16 months.
Yeah,
That's
14 to 16 months.
some of them stayed that long. I know that
I
my
think
aunts were only
93
there a
stayed that
couple of.
long.
There
and
was
then
also, I did an investigation, and the books never told them that most of those women, they were heading, because of the fascists, they had to supply so-called fresh meat to the Germans, and they were about to be held at the German camps in Germany.
So they used that as a pretext in order
Yeah.
to get
Well, there was
comfort prisoners for Nazis further north.
there was 2 concentration camps. One it was in Manfredonia, and one in Ariano.
Well, Ariano is just close by.
The one in Manfredonia, it's like then they turned into a butcher shop, for killing animals. But
Yeah.
it was an original. It was a campo di concentramento,
Concentration camp.
concentration camp.
But some of them were scheduled to move up into Dachau.
Yeah,
And-
Dachau. And again, I want to thank 2 women of the Canadian force that helped to free these 250 women.
Okay, but we'll get to that in a
Yeah,
second, because
okay.
what happened is the women were there from 42
Yeah.
to about
43.
44 when the Allies were moving up the Adriatic side.
Yeah.
They were also moving up the Turanian side, but the ones on the Adriatic side
Mhm.
were British troops
Yes.
in the main.
Yeah.
And part of the British troops, there was a Canadian contingent.
Yeah.
And the Canadian contingent was led by a lieutenant named, you guys remember his name?
No.
No.
Farley Mowat. Farley Mowat was a great Canadian writer.
Mm.
So he's the guy, when you want to thank all of those Canadians who freed these women in 44,
Yes.
that what happened is they essentially said, Farley Mowat saw all these women and said, are these women all criminals? And they said, no, they're political prisoners. And he freed them all. But it didn't end there. So what happened is, in 1949 and 50, the new Italian state reinstated the charges. That's what upset you a bit.
Well, that's what I'm really fighting for, because not only were they imprisoned, but they were being retrialed by the Italian government in 1950 in Lucera.
For what?
Well, again, for burning the city hall.
So it was
Or
a
attempted to, yes.
Yeah, that's what they were charged for.
little bit insane. Now, what you see,
And at the end, they were all acquitted.
of course,
Yeah.
what else would they be? Like if this had been another place, and another time,
That's
we'd
right.
be writing a cinema script for great movies
Yeah.
about this courageous women, these heroines of World War II. And so you see some images there of the town. Some of that church is built in the 1700s, and you've got some fabulous architecture. I think we had some views of the inside of the Chiesa Madre, the main church. But Monteleone, for being a small little place, has, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4 churches?
Yeah.
Four main churches,
Yeah.
yeah.
4 main churches.
Yeah.
And there's a chapel up on the hill when you get closer, you get close to
Sarrocco.
Arcadia.
Yeah. Oh, the other one, yeah.
The other way, yeah, but that's
Monte Crispiniano.
now that's the
That's
main
the-
church,
Yeah,
right?
that's the main church. That's the inside.
And that's the patron saint of
Saint Rocco.
Monteleone.
San Rocco.
Monteleone, yes,
You guys
yeah.
did the
We just had a picnic last weekend, and we had about 1,000 people, and a lot of the kids, about 20% were all kids. So we had our main dish is chicadillo. We had a chicadillo eating contest. We had 36 kids under 6 that wanted to participate, which was really fabulous. But talking about the church, we had stone masons that were renowned in the region. People from Foggia and from Bari came and hired our stone masons to build churches for them. And our monument in Monteleone is I think it's the 5th best monument voted in the whole region of Puglia.
no
So
kidding.
it's something to be proud of, yeah.
Well, and they should be proud of that.
Yes.
Now, you've also got a lot of individuals that have come from Monteleone into the United States, and they're going back to the 1890s. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah, there was a lot of people before the first war. They came here. They came in North America. At that time, they were going more in the States versus Canada. But then after
Up around what is it, Little Falls?
Little Falls, yes,
right?
Little Falls in Utica.
Well, there were.
Utica.
Well, like
Rochester.
I lived in 1964, and there was a big Monteleonese community in Port Chester, New York, East Chester, New York,
Right.
Tuckahoe.
Right.
I
I met a guy at the picnic. He said he came from Brooklyn,
from Brooklyn.
Yeah,
and Queens, actually.
He's Rocco. Come si chiama? il cognome?
Si chiama Rocco. It's got to be a name, Rocco.
Gotta be Monteleone,
the town is rich with everything else, but
Brienza.
Brienza, but first name. So you're
Yeah.
either Rocco, you're Joe, you're Tony.
He went
Giovanni.
he went to see a very, very young guy, and he went to serve with the American army in Germany. He married a German lady.
Yeah,
Santa. His first name is Santa, an Italian name. So he'd been married, he was telling me, 59 years to Santa. So, and she was there
God
with him.
bless
Which was nice. And his son is one of the main chief in New York City.
No kidding.
His son, yes.
So,
Yeah.
Monteleonese have moved around the world. They're a little bit like those women that rebelled against everybody and anybody.
Well, the women in Monteleone, they're a little bit temperamental, like they have that courage, unexplainable.
So your wife keeps you in line. That's what you're
Yeah.
telling me.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
And then
Listen.
one last thing, if I may say, we also have in Toronto our Honorable Joe Volpe, who went all the way up to be Minister responsible for Ontario by the then Prime Minister Paul Martin. And our own Joe Volpe ran for the Liberal leadership.
No, PC,
and
you're right.
when he won, we were at the Monteleone's Prime Minister there for a while.
So anybody who's watching, I paid him to say all that.
No.
Because we needed to do that. But, thank you very much for that recollection. But there's a lot of guys and a lot of women who have had great achievements from this little town whose population, and now that's the main square right there.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
They've done all kinds of things worldwide. The most they've ever had in that town is 5,400 people. Now you're, if you count in fives, you'll probably get to 900 because they're all here.
Well, we have in Monteleone about 1,200, roughly 1,250 voting people.
Yeah.
But in Toronto, I'm as president of the community. I'm representing well over 12 to 13,000 members because we have my children. I got 3 children. My wife is from Monteleone, and my grandchildren. So we're altogether about 23 people from 2. So we can easily say we have about 12, 13,000.
Now, no kidding
Monteleones.
aside, but now that
Yeah.
we're entering into municipal elections, I guess if I were a politician, I'd ask Louis, what's the number of the Monteleone Community Center?
Yeah.
So, but you have an event coming up on October 27th.
We have an event coming up on the 27th of October. We have the pleasure to have a general that served all his life in the Italian army, and he's been a very prominent, distinguished member of the army of the Carabinieri division. He has achieved quite a few distinguished goals, such as he was able to fight and discover few sets of the Brigate Rosse when
He was
they
an
bombarded
anti-terrorist guy.
the well-renowned terrorists throughout Europe, and which was composed mostly of left-wing and right-wing extremist students, so very hard to trace. But also he was the gentleman that discovered the body of Aldo Moro, who was the president of the DC, Partito Democratico
And
Italiano.
the Prime
the
Minister
biggest-
of Italy at the time.
He was at one time. He wasn't at the time, but he was before. So he discovered the body, and that was 40 years ago. So Antonio Cornacchia has been on TV regularly for this year, almost every other day, been interviewed as to how it was evolving at that time. Things were really bad. They called it the L'era del Piombo. It was really, really tough. So we're going to be honored to have him here on our gala, and that will be on October 27th.
And
So anyone
they
Monteleone
call
is
you,
listening, come
they
on
can
down.
call you and get
Yep.
tickets.
Yeah, give us a call, come at the club and pick up the tickets.
Yeah, we'll give you a little bit of publicity later on. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching us a little bit. Some of the images were just put there because we wanted to give you a flavor of what that town was like. It's an old medieval town. As I said, it's about 1,000 years old, maybe a little older. But it's the character of the people that came forward. You see a couple of the elements here to my right, Luigi Nuno and John Adorisio. I want to thank them for sponsoring this, but at the same time for having joined us and you in taking a look at a heroic moment in the history of women empowerment, not only in Italy but worldwide. And congratulations to all the women from Monteleone, congratulations to women who stand their ground, and congratulations to both of you
Thank you for
having
having
come
us
and
here.
joined us. This is Joe Volpe, the publisher of the Corriere Canadese, on behalf of Go Live TV and Corriere Media Group, inviting other communities to do as they have done. Put yourself forward. We'll give you an opportunity to explain your moment in history and the role of your town in the history of the Italian diaspora. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.